Dear teachers, welcome to JS in English Learning. We are with Unit 8 of the revised PGTRB syllabus, that is literary criticism, and we are going to discuss Alan Tate's famous essay, Tension in Poetry. When we think about tension in poetry, this particular writer and the essay is associated with a type of criticism called new criticism. Okay, what is new criticism, teachers? We have already discussed what is new criticism. A critical movement which was against biographical criticism, which believed in the autonomy of text. A criticism which believed that the meaning of the text is to be found well within the structure of the text. Okay, that is the linguistic structure of the text. Here in this essay, Alan Tate, a very important critic of this school called the new criticism, is going to tell us how poetry, the vital element of poetry is the tension which is within. Okay, are you there, teachers? Did you understand that? Now, to say a few things, the term new criticism, who coined the term new criticism, or how did the school get its name? There are many people who are claimed to be new critics. They are members of the school called new criticism. But the name came from a book written by John Crow Ransom. The name came from a book written by John Crow Ransom in the year 1941. And so the school is named New Criticism. And what is the technique adopted by New Criticism called? How did they find the meaning inside the text? They followed analytical reading style. What is analytical reading style called? Analytical reading style called close reading. Did you get that, teachers? It's a analytical reading style. To follow something very closely, it's called close reading. Is it possible for you to follow this, teachers? For them, text is very important. The structure of the text is important. Meaning is hidden inside the text. In order to find that meaning, they followed the text very closely, looking into the figurative, the figurative language that is used, the choice of the words that are used, the diction that is used. Adella follow panni. They try to find meaning. Okay, and this man, Alan Tate. Let me give you some information. During the 1940s and 50s, Alan Tate, an American critic, was an American man of letters. He served as the editor of two important journals called, one is Sweeney Journal, Sweeney Review, and the second one is Kenyon Review. Do you remember Kenyon Review? We read it somewhere. Recently, we came across Kenyon Review. A very important critical text that we studied was published in Kenyon Review. What was that? Archetypes of Literature. Archetypes of Literature by Northrop Frye. Am I right, teachers? Do you remember that? Here is the text. Here is the text, Kenyon Review, a very famous journal, and he served as the editor of this Kenyon Review. Other than that, as a poet, as a writer, he was associated with the literary group. This was in the previous year question paper. It was also there in NET exam. Okay, when the writer is associated with the literary movement, we need to know to which literary movement this writer is associated with, or this writer belongs to. He belongs to a literary group called the Fugitives. He belongs to a literary group called the Fugitives. Are you here? Did you get that? Who are the Fugitives? They are a group of southern poets from the southern part of America. They were based at Vanderbilt University, and they published a magazine named The Fugitives in 1920s. And who are the members of this particular literary group called the Fugitives? Literary movement, literary school of poets அப்படின்னு கூட சொல்லலாம். ஏன்னா ஸ்கூல் போயட்ரி அப்படின்னா ஸ்கூல் ஆஃப் போயட்ரி, ட்ராமா அப்படின்னா மூமெண்ட், கேஸ் அப்படியே நாவல்னாலும் மூமெண்ட் தான் சொல்றாங்க. இப்போ இதுல யார் யாரு அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, யூ ஹாவ் வெரி ஃபேமஸ் நேம்ஸ் யா. ஜான் க்ரோ ரான்சம், டொனால்ட் டேவிட்சன், ராபர்ட் பென் வாரன், and you have our writer Alan Tate. And what did they write about? They wrote about the values and tradition of the agrarian South. Okay, what is agrarian South? South was giving much famous to agriculture, about green revolution, whereas North was giving much importance to urbanization. அதை பத்தி எழுதின ரைட்டர்களில் இவரும் ஒருவர். You get that, teachers? According to Alan Tate, poetry is important by itself. It is an entity in itself. It is not dependent on anything. To find meaning, you are not supposed to go out of the text. You are only to search within the text. And New Criticism as a school of criticism of poetry, they refuse to accept the connection of literature with history or sociology or with any other science. And they were against the idea of using literature for propaganda. Propaganda அப்படின்னா ஒரு ஐடியாவை மக்களிடம் கொண்டு சேர்ப்பதற்காக இலக்கியத்தை பயன்படுத்தலாம் அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறதுக்கு எதிரானவர்கள். They wanted literature to be seen as a aesthetic body, art for art's sake. அப்படி அந்த பர்டிகுலர் மூமெண்டோட க்ளோஸா இருந்த மூமெண்ட் தான் நியூ கிரிட்டிசிசம். Did you understand the teachers? According to new critics, what is poetry? Poetry is communication, and language is a medium of communication. So, what did the new critics do? They studied the poetic language to understand the meaning of the language. And to find the meaning, they read the language of poetry. Okay, and this is something unique. In the context, namakku tension in poetry as a literary text becomes very important. Shall we get into the text? Tension in poetry. Are you with me, teachers? Any questions as of now? Do you have any questions?
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yes, madam.
Sir, could you please explain about the fugitives once again, sir? I cannot get what is agrarian South, sir.
Okay. Agrarian, agrarian is always to do with to do with nature, to do with the agricultural values. We call it as agrarian revolution, right? To revolutionize agriculture, to make it as a medium of living. When you think about America, even the literature is separated as northern literature and southern literature. Northern literature is to do with the industrial lifestyle, the problems that erupt because of industrialization, because of urbanization. But whereas in South, you will find life one with nature, or life which is deprived of the sophistication which is found in northern side. That is called agrarian South, the southern part of America. Okay, so there were a group of writers who were the representatives of southern part of United States of America. And these poets were based at an university called Vanderbilt University. They named themselves as the fugitives. Fugitives, wanderers. Okay, we do not know why they named themselves like that, but when we refer to the American literature, whenever they speak about the Southerners were very poor economically, so they were wandering from place to place looking for some jobs to get some material benefit. I think that is the reason they named their group as fugitives. They were the voice of the South. Did I answer your question, teacher?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay. Shall we go forward with the essay? Okay. Now, coming to Tension in Poetry. When was Tension in Poetry published? Tension in Poetry was published in 1955. The original text is a bit tough for you to get. I think it must be in some anthology, but I couldn't get it from the Internet Archive. I believe in Internet Archive where original texts are stored, but PDF version is not available. So I think I had a text and I missed it. That's why I was able to get this information somewhere back. Some time back, I prepared this material. So all those informations will be shared with you. Now, what is the author trying to say? Look at the two terms, poetry and what defines poetry. He tells it is tension which will sustain poetry. What is this tension that he is going to explain in this essay? Are you there, teachers? Okay. Now, the first information that you find in this essay, as a critic, okay, he tells the other critics to study the work not following one approach, but following many approaches. There are many possible approaches to study a piece of literature. So he tells, don't get stuck to one approach. Okay, try to approach a text with various approaches. Why should we approach various approaches? We call it as the various dimensions of the text. To get the various dimensions of the text, you should take various approaches in your hand. By resorting to various approaches, you can get the complete meaning of a poem. You can get the complete meaning of a poem. And then in this essay, you'll also find that Alan Tate criticizes the symbolist poetry and metaphysical poetry for confusing meaning. He criticizes the symbolist poetry and metaphysical poetry for confusing meaning because it's very difficult to get the meaning in symbolist poetry and metaphysical poetry. And then he says, poetry is a separate entity and it does not depend on the poet's ability. But where lies the meaning? The meaning is not in the poet's head. It is in the poetry itself. இது ஏறக்குறைய இதே மாதிரி ஒரு ட்ரெடிஷன்ல இருந்த ஒரு போயட் இருக்காரு. யாரு? இம்பர்சனாலிட்டி தியரி ஆஃப் போயட்ரிய பத்தி எஸ்ஏ எழுதினவர் யாரு? Somebody who is associated with that theory called the theory of impersonality of poetry. Whose idea was that? The man who wrote a tradition and individual talent. Who is that?
Yes, Eliot, sir.
Tradition and individual talent. That particular essay's idea is actually echoed here. because it is T.S. Eliot who said, okay, when a poet writes, he should be conscious in order to shed his personality. He is not supposed to transfer his personality into the poem. Rather, he should consciously keep aside his personality from the poem so that the poem becomes, or the literature becomes, an autonomous body. அதே விஷயத்தை தான் இவரும் எக்கோ பண்றார். Okay, traditional individual talent is echoed here. What is the theory echoed here? The theory of impersonality of poetry. Impersonality of poetry. When you are looking at a poem, don't search for the personality of the poet there. Don't look for the authorial intention there or the author's life to be echoing there. இப்போ நார்மலா நம்ம வில்லியம் வேர்ட்ஸ்வர்த் எடுத்தோம்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன், அவருடைய போயத்தை எப்படி நம்ம இன்டர்பிரேட் பண்ணுவோம்? For example, there is a poem called Stolen Boat Ride, which is part of the Prelude collection. And the Stolen Boat Ride, there is a story of a little boy who is sneaking into the national park in the Lake District without the knowledge of anybody there. He is stealing a boat. Normally, he has to pay for the boat ride, but without paying for the boat ride, he sneaks into the boat and he takes the boat and rides to the other end of the lake. And other end of the lake, there is a very big hill. He enjoys the beauty, and after enjoying, he is not at all worried about the prick of the conscience. ஏன் அப்படின்னா அவர் ஒரு அட்வென்ச்சர் ஸ்பிரிட்டோட அங்க போயிட்டாரு. ரிட்டர்ன்ல வரும்போது the conscience overpowers and it is trying to threaten the boy. The boy happens to turn back, and the mountain seems to be a very big giant which is trying to swallow him. With fear, he reaches the other end of the lake and he ties the tree to the willow tree and goes home and lies and weeps for having committed a crime. The crime is not paying for the boat ride. இப்போ இதை இந்த ஒரு போயம் தான் சொல்லி இருக்கிறாரு. இந்த போயம் நம்ம எடுக்கும்போது என்ன சொல்றோம்? This is what happened in the life of William Wordsworth அப்படின்னு அவர் லைஃப்ல நடந்த இன்சிடென்ட்டோட அந்த போயத்தை கனெக்ட் பண்ணிடுவோம். This is called biographical criticism. But new critics will say no to biographical criticism. While you are reading a poem, read the poem as a poem. Don't look for the personality of the poet there. Don't look for biographical information of the poet inside the text. Did you understand this, teachers? Yes, did you get it or not?
Yes, sir.
And then in this essay, Alan Tate is going to speak about terms like tension, and then he is going to speak about meaning in the context of extension and meaning in the context of intention. I'll be explaining all these things in the course of the deliberation. Now, according to Alan Tate, what is good poetry? Good poetry is a combination of intention and extension. சும்மா ஒரு ஃபார்முலா மாதிரி ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கோங்க. Okay, good poetry is intention plus extension. Let me give this formula. What is this intention and extension? Okay, he uses two different types of meanings. One is called denotative meaning. It's called denotation. The other one is called connotation. When we speak about meaning, we speak in terms of denotative meaning and we speak in terms of connotative meaning. What do you mean by denotative meaning? Every word has two different aspects within itself. One is called denotation. The other one is called connotation. What do you mean by denotation? அப்படின்னா ஒரு வார்த்தை எடுத்துட்டீங்கன்னா it is used literally. Literal meaning. Denotative meaning is nothing but literal meaning. It is also called dictionary meaning. Denote அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு மீனிங் இருக்கு. டெனடேஷன் புரியல சார், பெரிய வேர்டா தெரியுது அப்படின்னா கவலைப்படாதீங்க. உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்ச ஒரு வேர்டு உள்ள இருக்கு. என்ன? டினோட். டினோட்னா டு பாயிண்ட் அட். இப்ப ஒரு வேர்டை எடுத்துட்டீங்கன்னா அதுக்கு டிக்ஷனரி மீனிங்னு ஒண்ணு இருக்கும். அந்த டிக்ஷனரி மீனிங்னா லிட்ரல் மீனிங். இதுதான் சார் மீனிங் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. ஆனா நம்ம என்ன பண்ணுவோம், அதை எக்ஸ்டெண்ட் பண்ணி வேற ஒரு இடத்துலையும் அதை பயன்படுத்துவோம். தட் இஸ் கால்ட் கானடேட்டிவ் மீனிங். Did you understand the teachers? By denotation, by connotation அப்படின்னு critical textல எல்லாம் பார்த்திருப்பீங்க. Okay. So, poetry அப்படின்னா என்ன, மீனிங்னா என்ன அப்படி எடுத்துக்கோங்களேன். Good poetry or the meaning is a combination of two things. Combination of what? அப்படின்னா combination of denotative meaning and connotative meaning. Did you understand that? There is no sound. According to Alan Tate, in all great poetry, there is a common feature that will allow us to intend what? அப்படின்னு கேட்டீங்கன்னா there is something which will help us invent the meaning. What is it? அப்படின்னு கேட்டீங்கன்னா he calls it as tension. What keeps a good, what makes a good poem அப்படின்னு கேட்டீங்கன்னா it is tension that makes a poem good poem. And it is this tension that takes us closer to the complete meaning of a poem. Okay. And when Alan Tate speaks about tension, he doesn't refer to the psychological tension, but he is referring to other aspects of tension. And what is tension? அப்படின்னு அவர் கேட்கும்போது சில பேர் என்ன சொல்லுவாங்கன்னா, ஓகே இஸ் இட் மெட்டபாரிக்கல் யூசேஜ் அப்படின்னு கேட்டீங்கன்னா இவர் சொல்றாரு, ஐ எம் யூசிங் த டேர்ம் நாட் as a general metaphor but as a special metaphor. Tension, the term is not used as a general metaphor but as a special metaphor to speak about two aspects that is called extension and intention. Did you understand these teachers? எப்பொழுதுமே இந்த terms தான் அதிகமா questions கேட்பாங்க. So kindly pay heed to the terms. Okay, now we are going for a break and then we will get back.